Welcome to Sam Outside. I'm Sam and I'm outside doing what I can for my health, participating in what is known as nature connection. That's right. It's a difference between simply being outdoors, spending time outside, and doing it mindfully. I've been doing it for a long time. Purpose of me doing this is to advocate and share my own successes, personally, but also professionally as a certified forest therapy guide in the science and in the knowledge that nature heals. I read an interesting study. 60%. Nature connection has dropped by 60% over the last 200 years. Yeah, since the 1800s, we as a species on this planet have been removed and are removing ourselves from nature connection, and the results of that are detrimental to our health, more specifically our mental health, but it also is now a factor in our physical health. So nature connection has fallen by 60% since the 1800s. I kept reading because I'm like, how did they come up with that number? What were some of the criteria for that? I'm like, share the numbers. And what the study showed and what the study did to come up with those numbers was, it was more than just surveying people, asking how much time in their daily lives do they participate in nature connection, right? Not just time spent outside, but actually engaging with nature mindfully, intentionally, with purpose, right? So, but it's more than just that, right? So those numbers themselves just showed that it's not as prevalent in people's lives globally, right? First and foremost globally, but it's also it's in our language. There has been a noticeable decline in the use of nature and those words associated with nature in literature, right? So, well, that's relative because think about the amount of literature that has increased in 200 years. Well, when you take a look at that, I mean, 200 years ago, nature was more prevalent in our lives, so it was just more prevalent and needed, required, the reality of what people were sharing in terms of words in literature. But like, literature is not just books, it's poetry, it's music. So we're not hearing words associated with nature in everyday language, but also the things we read, our understanding of ourselves and the world, and as it relates to those issues, right? So the access of information exponentially, we're not talking like a gradual, it has been exponential, our access to information over the past 200 years. And by 60%, that information contains less about nature. There are fewer words like forest and river, trees. Simple words are just on the decline by 60%. Right? It's also how we're spending our time, right? We're just by 60% as a species. We're just not spending that much time in nature because we are in cities. We are in structures. Our buildings do not incorporate nature. There's no natural aspect to it. The geometry, the lines, the feeling of nature is just not part of urban safety. It just didn't make sense. And it's been 200 years, the nature connection has fallen by 60%. So it's in our language, it's in our foods, right? We now have access to foods that come from all over the planet, right? And we don't really think about where that food comes from. Well, it's been 100 years, just over 100 years that we've been eating an incredible amount, an unprecedented amount of processed foods, things that come in a jar, things that come in a can, things that become mechanically separated and reconstituted with so many additives, preservatives, so that we can increase the efficiency of our lives. So we spend less time not only preparing the food, we spend less time consuming that food at the table, chewing, because of how easy that is. So it's actually changing the human structure of the jaw. All right, dentistry was quite a different thing 200 years ago, obviously, due to technology, but also because of the need. We just didn't have the need for it. Our jaws fit our teeth. That's not the case anymore, and a lot of that has to do with processed foods, with how we raise our children, right? Children went from nursing to eating what we consider adult foods. Baby food wasn't really a thing. So that is in terms of human evolution, it's a very, very new thing. And we're seeing the results of that in the changes of human skeleton. But our posture is different. Ailments due to stress, wasn't a thing. Our stresses were very different 200 years ago. And a lot of that has to do with nature, all right? When people died, it was more nature related, as opposed to, oh, you've got something happening in your internal processes due to your quality of life, which is, code for you're making choices in what you consume, what you spend your time, and, everything is processed, right? And how your brain is reacting and interacting emotionally with your internal organs. Okay, we've changed the way we see ourselves in the world. So 200 years ago, this was very normal. You needed to be outside, and the foods you ate came from outside. They didn't come from a can or a jar. So when we factor in all these changes in the words we're using, which is the words we're reading, hearing, speaking, in the foods, and in our time, and our dwellings and shelter, our occupations, well, yeah, then it really started to make sense. I'm like, only 60? Yeah. So those numbers were just staggering. And we're only now beginning to appreciate and understand and study and share the benefits of rewilding. Not just urban spaces, right? That's one factor to create change. Is there are efforts and understandings and studies and laws, which include bylaws, which include numbers, that there needs to be green spaces and green aspects to development, to neighborhoods, to schools, to institutions, right? So that effort, that knowledge, and that mandate is to promote a returning, a rewilding of our brains and our environment, right? And the next aspect that is going to be fundamental to that rewilding of the human species is how early we engage children, right? Our fears, our apprehensions, our need for indoors in the rearing of our children, that is all learned behavior, right? Children don't know that there are risks associated with spending time outside, right? That's 200 years ago, it's life. We were outside, and they were just fine. So it's become a generational gap, all right? So when we take a look at generations, right, we are 3 generations, 4 generations greatly removed. And so now with AI and with the ability to forecast where's this going, right? They can have graphs that show, well, if we continue on this path, these are the likely outcomes. But if we start to go down this path, then, there's no change in the outcome. But if we really make conscious efforts in how we rear our children, how we spend our time as adults, and how we build communities for future generations, this is the likely outcome. So that work is being done. Those numbers are being crunched. And the forecast of human physical, mental, and emotional, financial health and stability include nature, time outside, right? So the numbers, initially I didn't understand how they came up with 60% nature connection decline over the last 200 years. But, the more I think about it and the more I read, and then continue to read other shared concepts, shared studies, yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, it's not rocket surgery, right? It's just recent human history, right? So there are consequences to that, and we're seeing it in We're seeing it in hospitals. We're seeing it in educational institutions, right? There is a genuine apprehension, bordering on fear, of the outdoors, right? There are risks. Yeah, there always have been. There always will be. So, well, just don't expose them to the risk and they'll be fine. Well, not great. So, I try not to take it for granted. I genuinely appreciate, know, and make an effort every day, all day, because that's what I've chosen to do with my life, is to share in my own life, in my family's life, through this format, but also as an occupation, as a camping professional, 25 years in the camping and outdoor education world. But also, I mean, I've been a rock climber, been an arborist, certified forest therapy guide, canoe tripper, avid fisherman, right? Outdoorsman, if you will. Yeah, I never did the math, and I grew up in an area, part of the world where that's just what everyone did as a generation. And now I look around at my circle, family, friends. Yeah, I am a minority. Yeah, I am in that 40% of my own circle that spends this much time outdoors. And I see the difference. I hear the difference. I feel the difference. And I'm trying to make a difference, right? I'm trying to share the benefits, the need for spending time outside. So nature connection is so important, and it is on the decline naturally. That's the process of industrialization, science, technology, efficiency, right? That's, can't escape it. So that's where the effort and the need for sharing information like this, and sharing the science, sharing the technology, and the changes that policy is requiring. So the silver lining in all that is that 60% is not continuing. But 59% now, since the 1990s, that there are efforts globally through sharing of information, through access to technology like this, that there is a need, the science is out there, and it's a promotion, and we're starting to see the shift. The simple creation and popularity of things like forest schools, making access to parks, governments at all levels, understanding and promoting and actually following through on the need of incorporating green spaces, not only in cities, in neighborhoods, but now in structures, right? They make green buildings. So there's math and science funding, promotion, and actual construction in planning of corporate and residential buildings that include green spaces, right? So even if it's in your yard, it's nature. If it's green, it's alive, it'll promote other living things, and we need to be surrounded by that. That's nature connection, right? But there is a difference between simply being outside and making the nature connection that affects you physically, mentally, emotionally. And it's the intentionality and the mindset, which includes being present, being grateful, and incorporating that outdoors 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week, making an effort to spend 5 hours of time in nature once a month, and then finding a way to do it for 3 days once a year, right? Greatly changes and improves physical, mental, emotional health. So nature connection is on the rise. And yay, a small win. And I'd like to think that I've been doing my part by being an advocate, seeing the successes, and sharing what I know personally, and sharing the science through what it is that I do every day as a director in camping outdoor education, as a certified forest therapy guide who offers a little more intentionality that proves results in a very specific way, which once it becomes a practice, nature connection, mindfulness, creep into every aspect of life. It'll change the words. It'll change the diet. It'll change the overall improvement of health, physical, mental, and emotional. So it's been 200 years that we as a species have been going in one direction. Doesn't mean you can't look in the rearview mirror and at least acknowledge what was in the past, right? That rearview mirror is smaller for a reason, right? The windshield is giving us the direction, all the information we need to move forward, but it doesn't hurt to look back and try to find ways to use that information. So start using the words. Start using the foods that are natural. So thank you for being outside. Thank you for being outdoors. Thank you for finding a forest. Yes, I'm trying to use intentional words. Please, go outside. It's so good for us. Promote it and share it. Advocate. Learn. Right? Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your support. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for all this. And I'm grateful for the changes that I've been making because I'm seeing the results. All right, I'll talk to you again soon.